Lord of Omens. Give me sight beyond sight.
Greetings, Starfighter. You have been recruited by the Star League to defend the frontier against Sur and the Kodan Armada. Get ready. Prepare for blast-off.
Hey, Doc, we better back up. We don't have enough road to get up to 88. Roads? Well, we're going, we don't need roads.
Remember, no matter where you go, there you are.
This is 80's Reboot Overdrive podcast.
Oh my god. That is like so dated.
Hello, listener. This is 80's Reboot Overdrive. I am your 80's Reboot Overdrive overlord, Dave. Online tonight, I have got 80's music girl, Rose. Say hi, Rose.
Hi, Rose.
And 80's auto reverse, Scott's online too. Scott?
Hello, everybody. It's good to be back.
And what we are going to do tonight, for our listeners, what you're going to do is you're going to hear these podcasts in a series of weeks. But what we're going to try to do is we're going to try to record them in a series. So what we're doing is we're continuing our 80s icon discussion. Past 80s icon shows that we've done: Harrison Ford, Harold Ramis, Leah Thompson, Chevy Chase, Diane Lane, Robert Downey Jr., and that mystery lost episode. I've come up with kind of a thought process around how we might get that one out of the archives for you. I'll bring that up a little bit later if I remember. But for now, what we're doing is we're going to be going through a series where we're talking about the stars of the hit film The Breakfast Club. We're starting with Miss Molly Ringwald. But what you guys don't know is, for a little bit of the history of the podcast, I had listened to, some previous editions of past podcasts before I got into Southgate Media Group, and they were at one time talking about doing a show around John Hughes. And for some reason, Rob Southgate has this thing where he almost wants to name every show after Molly Ringwald. I don't know what that's about, but anyway, it was kind of funny. And so 80's Reboot Overdrive, his first inclination had some sort of Molly Ringwald in the name. I think it was something like Molly Ringworld or something like that. So it would have been a much different animal had we gone that route, obviously, versus having the cool title of 80's Reboot Overdrive. But I want to give you a little bit of history on that. When we get started into our 80s Icon series, we talk about the filmography of the specific person in the 80s. So Molly Ringwald, very busy, obviously. We're going to quickly go through and talk about the movies that she was in during the 80s. So at the very beginning of it, she had starred in The Facts of Life. 1982, she did Tempest. 1983, she did Packing It In. Same year, she also did Space Hunter Adventures in the Forbidden Zone. 1984, she was in 16 Candles. 1985, she did The Breakfast Club. She was in a TV movie called Surviving. 1986, she did Pretty in Pink. She's also in another TV series called Tall Tales and Legends. 1987, quite busy. She did PK and the Kid, King Lear, and The Pickup Artist. 1988, she did a movie called For Keeps. 1988 again, Fresh Horses. And that rounds out her 80s filmography. So she was very busy, obviously. Start off with Rose. What is your favorite 80s moment with Miss Molly Ringwald?
There are a couple, actually. I think I saw Pretty in Pink before I saw 16 Candles. I didn't necessarily I like the movie 16 Candles, but the character, I know she was supposed to be whiny in 16, and everybody forgot her birthday. Spoiler alert. But just in case no one's seen it, you just never know these days. But to me, Her role as Andy in Pretty in Pink definitely stood out to me among all the other ones that she did, even The Breakfast Club. That was a tough movie, I think, to have such a large ensemble of really good actors, the Brat Pack, so to speak, at that time. And I don't know if any one of them really stood out as like, oh wow, this role was a lot better than the other one. I think they equally owned that movie, and that's really difficult. That is really hard, I think, when you have such a large ensemble. I love Pretty in Pink for her role, and I also loved the Pickup Artist too. Because
right.
when we
so was there a moment in Pretty in Pink that you liked the most?
The end, when I loved her segments with Annie Potts' character. If nobody knows the story, her mother left the family. Andy's mother left when she was very young, and her father was having a really hard time coming to grips with that. So she had this older friend who was an adult that she worked with, who was her boss at the record store, and she would go and talk to her about girl stuff. And the one particular segment that I liked was she was talking about Andrew McCarthy's character, Blaine, had asked her to the prom, and of course Annie Potts was like, oh my god, you waited all this time to tell me. And they're doing the girly screaming thing, and she's like, are you going, right? And she's like, I don't know. And so Annie Potts takes her dress out of the closet and shows it to her, and then she does this whole, just transforms into like that person. She puts her dress on, Annie Potts does, and does her hair in this huge beehive. And you hear the song Cherish playing in the background, and they're dancing. And Molly Ringwald is just looking like, oh my god, if anybody walks in on us, I am going to be like so totally embarrassed. But she's telling her that, she went to her prom with a married man, and you need to go. If you never do anything else in your life, go to the prom. But it was just that one particular segment. It was just like really super cute. So I don't know. And then to find out what she does with the dress afterwards, when she decides to go and says, the hell with it. If you don't want to go, I'll go by myself, and I'm going to take this dress and make it something that I can be proud of. So yeah, that whole movie to me was just really, really a very, I don't know. It was just, a lot of the statutes that kids had to deal with in high school, and like they didn't have enough to deal with already, and then it's just like, now you've got money and I don't have money, now you hate me because I don't, and all this stuff, and then you mesh those two worlds together when you bring Andy and Blaine into the mix, and it was really very poignant. I think John Hughes did an amazing job on that movie.
Yeah, I'm with you. I remember that scene where they were slow dancing together, Annie Potts and her.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that was very fun.
Hey,
what's your favorite Molly Ringwald moment?
I really liked her character in The Breakfast Club as Claire. She seems... She plays each role very well through Pretty in Pink. And, I think everybody knows her from Pretty in Pink and 16 Candles and The Breakfast Club the most. I mean, I had forgotten that she was in Facts of Life and even a couple episodes of Different Strokes. Same character, and then that was a spin. Facts of Life was a spin-off of Different Strokes with Mrs. Garrett and all that. Anyway, the her character in The Breakfast Club, how she went from being kind of a snob to then ending up liking the bad boy. It's kind of funny that she went that direction towards the end of the movie. And I don't know. Her reaction when they were pressuring her, whether she did it or not, and she just ends up flipping out and says, "Yes, no, I didn't do it," And she, it's relatable. It's another one of the characters in 16 Cannibals. Wait a minute, did I just say 16 Cannibals?
You did.
You did.
I meant to say The Breakfast Club. I said 16 Cannibals. That's good stuff. Okay. Save that for the outtakes, my friend.
What are you talking about? That makes it on the show.
Oh, man. Anyway.
So back to 16 Cannibals. Go ahead.
Yeah.
You know, that might be actually a good show somehow.
Yeah.
The Breakfast Club.
It sounds like a mix between a John Hughes and an 80s horror movie.
There you go.
Oh boy. All right. Can we get back on track? I don't know.
Yes,
I
please.
totally lost my my train of thought. So there's this girl, Molly, and her last name is Ringwald, and she was in the Breakfast Club, and she was awesome.
Yeah, there you go. Yay!
You remember that one time when you were in that movie, The Breakfast Club? Yeah, that was awesome. All right. So, Dave, why don't we go back to you? Why don't you tell us about your love of Molly Ringwald?
Well, here's the thing. I wanted to go with the pickup artist, but I'm leaning more towards the Breakfast Club. And the reason why I'm thinking the Breakfast Club is because I had heard that the discussion that they were having amongst their group when they were talking about what they did to get into detention was all kind of up to them. They had a chance to create that dialogue amongst themselves. That wasn't really scripted. So there's this part of it that I would love to find out, and I probably should do some more research before we start recording, but I was, the dialogue where Brian is asking, what happens on Monday morning, and, for Molly Ringwald, Claire's character, and she very honestly was like, oh, we're not friends, or we're not going to be friends, because, I have, my clique, my popular group. She doesn't say it like that, but, but she says it in such a way that she's just so completely honest, and I love that moment. And because it was, you wouldn't get that. You wouldn't get that in real life because somebody's going to tell you what you want to hear. They're not going to be completely brutally honest. And if that was something that they had the chance to come up with as, the artist making this film, and they put that dialogue together without it actually being scripted, that's a big credit to them if that was something that Molly Ringwald came up with or the group came up with and collaborated on. I applaud them for that. And then, of course, the way Molly Ringwald played it off as Claire was just so completely believable. Because then it led into that big, long argument with Bender, Judd Nelson, where they were, talking about, if they were ever walking hand in hand or arm in arm on Monday at school, and they start, getting into each other, yelling at each other. And it's just really well done, very powerful type, part of the movie, and that's a credit to Molly Ringwald and obviously the rest of them.
Yeah. Doesn't Anthony Michael Hall's character start crying when she says that?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. Exactly.
That part got me because he's just, he was such a sweet kid. I know he was like really smart and everything, but I don't know. And just for him to just accept that decision, as she told him, and just not really be able to handle it, that was deep.
Yeah, very. And like I said, if it was something that they were able to have the artistic freedom to come up with, I don't know if it was something that they had a lot of discussion around, or John Hughes just said, okay, I'm setting up the camera, do whatever comes natural. If that's what came out of it, then big credit to them.
Definitely.
So I have something that I recall hearing an interview with Molly Ringwald. It wasn't too long ago, maybe a year or two ago.
Right.
And so she has at the time, she was telling this story, she had a daughter who's 11, I think. And so her daughter asked they were going to get together, her friends were going to get together and watch The Breakfast Club. And her daughter, I guess, didn't want to go and watch it with them. She wanted to watch it with Molly, right? Molly sat down and watched the movie with her. She might have been 9. She was a little young, and it even seems like a little too young for the subject matter of most of it, but it was going around the school, and kids were I don't know how they got into it. But anyway, so Molly decided, okay, I'm going to watch it with my daughter. and they sat down and watched it, and Molly said that her daughter, missed a lot of the more adult-lined humor, and I think at the end of the movie, she asked her daughter, well, what did you relate to the most? And she started crying, like her daughter just started bawling, and she said that when Brian was having his moment of being, breaking down, like you guys were talking about, that he has all this pressure on him, and that's what her daughter was feeling. So Molly was like just crushed, and she's like, I can't believe I put all this pressure on you. I'm so sorry. And it was just a really, really fascinating interview. It was cool to listen to it. And then, so it's interesting how her daughter related to a different character in The Breakfast Club than what she played.
Nice.
Awesome.
Right.
And then my wife also, she had the book. I can't find the book now, but Molly's book that she wrote a few years back, and actually went down and got it signed by Molly Ringwald. So
nice.
we have a little bit of memorabilia from it.
Nice.
Cool.
So that's the story I have about Molly Ringwald.
Very cool.
Yeah, it was a very interesting interview.
All right, so on Twitter, I do this thing called 80's Battle. And what I've done is I put Claire from The Breakfast Club against Andy in Pretty in Pink. Who do you think won?
Samantha Baker.
Okay. That was on one of the choices. Come on.
Come on, it's got to be Claire.
I want to say Andy.
All right, so it was a retweet for Claire, like for Andy. We had 4 retweets, 5 likes.
Oh, by
so,
one.
Andy
by one.
Yep.
Yeah. And only because I didn't vote, so if I vote, it'll be 6.
Yeah, well,
but it would still be 1. If I voted, it'd still be 1.
This is true. Dave, you would be the. You probably can't even retweet or like your own thing, can you?
No.
No, you can't.
Okay. So you wouldn't be the deciding factor.
Right.
I want to mention, I know that we typically stick to the 80s, but she was also in one of my favorite books. Not in the book, but she portrayed the Stephen King TV series. She was in that as Franny Goldsmith, which is a very big character in the book, and I loved her in that show.
Understand?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
I never saw that.
Yeah, it's long because the book is long, and they did, it's kind of it's a mini series like the way they did the original.
Yeah.
It's 4 parts.
I think that's when I stopped reading Stephen King. Is when his book started to be
1,000 pages.
Mm-hmm. Pretty much.
Yeah, I read that one twice, believe it or not. But anyway, I just, there's a couple other after the 80s that were, I remember Betsy's Wedding.
I loved Betsy's Wedding.
It was amusing.
I haven't watched that in forever. That was adorable. Did either of you see any of the other movies that she was in?
Other than the ones that we already mentioned, I did see Fresh Horses. That was another one with Andrew McCarthy, I think, wasn't it?
Yeah, I was actually
that was a very
big build-up.
Adult-oriented one too. I mean,
yeah, I was disappointed in that.
Yeah,
I really was looking forward to renting that movie and watching it. And I remember the first 15 minutes, I was like, ooh, ooh.
Yeah. Oh my. Oh my.
Yes. Like, well, let's just leave nothing to be desired, shall we? And Ben Stiller was in that, which is weird.
Oh, really? Oh, that's right.
But I was looking at the Space Hunter Adventures. In
the 3D Space Hunter in 3D. Yeah.
That actually cool. And Ernie Hudson is in that.
Ernie Hudson, really?
Yeah, from Ghostbusters. It actually looks kind of cool. Very futuristic-y.
Yeah,
Peter Strauss.
I love those obscure ones that don't get the publicity.
Michael Ironside, always a good actor in Navy. Or anywhere. He's actually a great character actor. Packing It In looks kind of cute. That was a TV movie, though. It actually says on here, this is what I didn't get, because I didn't see it in her bio at all, but it says, and if you look at the picture for Packing It In, Valley girl Molly Ringwald meets the great outdoors. Was she in Valley Girl?
No.
Okay. Maybe it's just they coined the phrase. Maybe.
Yeah, I think it's a kind of a reference to what type of character she might have been playing or something.
Gotcha.
I mean, that's what it sounds like to me.
Okay, I was taking it literal.
Okay, well, I got some trivia from Molly.
Oh, nice.
You know, I always like to think about things where, what could have been. Mm-hmm. And she had actually refused the Leah Thompson role in Some Kind of Wonderful.
Really?
Okay.
And then that ended her successful business relationship with John Hughes because he was furious about it.
Wow.
Yeah, so that's I didn't know that.
That's crazy.
Yep. She made the cover of Time magazine in 1986.
Nice.
At the beginning of her film collaboration with John Hughes, she was driving a silver Volkswagen Rabbit convertible. By the time it ended with Pretty in Pink, she was driving a white BMW.
Nice. Change up there, Molly.
Yep. Because her name is so associated with the Brat Pack movies of the 1980s, there's a band that plays covers of 80s hits called the Molly Ringwalds.
Yes, they're actually fairly good too. I've heard some of their stuff.
All right. Well, if the Molly Ringwalds ever want to be on a podcast, let us know.
Well, there's also a local Chicago band that does a lot of 80s stuff called 16 Candles.
Yep, and I've talked to them.
Yeah, oh, that's right. You guys did that. You did that interview. Yeah, and they're really good. They put on a heck of a show.
They are awesome.
Yeah, I've seen them. I think I've seen them once.
Now she lists what her favorite film and kiss was. Do you guys have any idea which one that would be?
No.
It was Andrew McCarthy, Pretty in Pink.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
So that was a quote that she had given, was that she was that she had fond memories of Pretty in Pink, and that was her favorite film to do, and says that the kiss at the very end was her favorite screen kiss. Now this floored me when I found out. She was considered for the role of Vicky Vale in Batman.
Really?
Wow.
Yeah. Think about that. Isn't that crazy?
I don't see that.
I'm trying. I just really didn't. Yeah, I think Kim Basinger did a great job with that. Nobody ever needs to change that. Because that was totally her.
I would have to agree. I can't see Molly doing that one. You know, it's a shame. I think people get pigeonholed into certain roles, and a lot of people do. And I just can't see her being Vicky Vale in Batman. It's so out of character for her. But then again, I didn't expect fresh horses either.
I don't know. I think that was something somebody was planning for a while just to do the reunion aspect of it.
Oh, yeah.
Because I got sucked into it. I mean, I know I wanted, like I said, couldn't wait to see it, and then I haven't seen it since. So,
do you guys have any final thoughts on Molly Ringwald? We'll start with Rose.
Okay. Well, honestly, Molly Ringwald is very, very talented actress and a human being on top of it. I know she's written a lot of books. She's written children's books. I think she wrote or something about children. Either it has something to do with parenting, or she wrote a children's book. Or she's just really intelligent, and I just appreciate her talent in anything that she does, because she's a very gifted actress. And I want to thank her for all the fond memories that I have through her movies in the 80s. Thank you, Molly Ringwald, for everything that you've done for the 80s.
Yeah, I would definitely agree, because it's tough to think of, an 80s teen movie without her name coming associated to it.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you're going to definitely think other people at the same time, but near that top of that list has got to be Molly Ringwald.
Definitely.
So, final thoughts, Scott?
I kind of have to mirror what you guys said about, you can't think about many of the movies that were part of that group of movies without thinking of Molly Ringwald and the characters that she played, and it's just it's part of my history. It's not just part of film history; it's part of my history now too. And everybody that got to share those characters as she was portraying on the screen. And I think we're going to get into that kind of feel of all the characters that we're going to talk about down, the next few episodes throughout the Breakfast Club. They all had an impact on us in many ways when they were playing those roles back then. So, here she is having an impact on us 30 years later.
Yep.
It's very cool.
Yep. Very, very cool. So, I kind of really threw my final thoughts in with Rose's there. I just want to go back to the pickup artist. I didn't give it a lot of time on this one because we were just so into talking about Breakfast Club. But, another strong role for her, for me, was the pickup artist. And, what I really enjoyed so much about it is just that it really showed off the strong woman, independent thinker that she had in roles like not so much around the Breakfast Club because she was kind of in a clique thing, but if you looked at pickup artists compared to with Pretty in Pink, those she had that degree of independence, and that is what Molly brought to that role. That really made it as successful as I think it was, because if she wasn't believable as that type of person, then it wouldn't have worked. So big credit to Molly Ringwald. So social media credentials. Rose, what do you got?
80's Music Girl on Twitter. 80's Music Girl on Facebook. 80's Music Girl on Instagram. And 80's Music Girl blogspot.com.
Very good. Scott, what about you?
80's Auto Reverse on Twitter and 80's Mixtape Auto Reverse on Facebook. That's a page.
You're not giving Scott's Eye anymore?
Oh yeah, I mean Scott's Eye too. That's Scott's Eye. I don't check that as often as I used to. So.
Okay, and that's still on Twitter. So yeah, Scott's Eye, as in eye.
It's my eye. It's the one eye that I see with through my camera. It's my camera lens eye. I don't know.
All right, and so I'm Dave. I take care of our Tumblr account, which is 80sreboot.tumblr.com. Also, we have an email, so that's 80sreboot@gmail.com. Twitter, we are at 80sreboot. Facebook is facebook.com/80sreboot, and the blog is southgatemediagroup.com/80srebootblog. Now, I kind of hinted at kind of a way that you guys can see or find out a little bit more about our Lost Mystery episode. What I want to do is I want to use this as a vehicle to ask you for a huge favor. What I want everybody to do, if you have a few minutes, go into the iTunes system and give us a rating review. It's only going to take you a few minutes, but you go in there and put in a few stars. I'm hoping for 6, even though you can only go as high as 5. But I like to have my little moment with Spinal Tap. Go in there, give us 6 stars. Write a quick little thing about how awesome we are. If you think that's what we are, if you don't, then by all means, whatever comment you feel like putting in there. Any feedback is good feedback. We really appreciate it. And, we're going to keep an eye. If we get a lot more reviews, then maybe we'll be able to unearth that mystery lost episode of the 80s Icon series. And then you'll finally
get to hear it. I think that's a great idea.
So I'm putting a little pressure back on you, the listener. If you're interested in finding out about that, please do that for us. So with that, we appreciate everybody reliving the 80s with us, and have a wonderful, well, actually, whatever time it is you're listening. It could be night, could be day, could be afternoon. Have a good whatever.
Later.
Good night. We hope you've enjoyed this show. This podcast is part of the 80s Reboot Overdrive channel on Southgate Media Group. You can follow us on Facebook on the 80s Reboot group page. We're also on Twitter and Tumblr at 80s Reboot. We invite you to check out all the wonderful podcasts and blogs available at southgatemediagroup.com. And thank you for reliving the 80s.